I need you to tell me honestly. Was I a monster for what I did? Or was this just the ultimate case of the punishment fitting the crime? Because even now, months later, I wake up in the middle of the night wondering if I broke her mind or if she had already broken mine. Imagine the person you love most in the world looking at you every single morning with the eyes of a terrified stranger. For months, I poured my soul into rescuing her from her own memory loss, only to find out it was all a sick, calculated game. The revelation didn't just hurt. It shattered my reality, and when I finally snapped, I decided to give her exactly what she'd been faking. I gave her a world where she truly didn't exist. I didn't just leave her. I erased the very ground she stood on. Tell me, if you found out your entire life was a lie being told by the person you trusted most, would you just walk away? Or would you make sure they felt the same void they forced you to live in? Our relationship started like a dream, the kind you see in movies where the colors are just a little too bright and the laughter is a little too easy. Sarah was everything I ever wanted, brilliant, funny, and so full of life that being around her felt like standing in the sun. We met at a crowded bookstore on a rainy Tuesday. She was reaching for a book on the top shelf, and I helped her down with it. We ended up talking for 3 hours in the aisle, completely oblivious to the world around us. We moved in together within 6 months, convinced we were soulmates. Our apartment was filled with plants, books, and the kind of comfortable clutter that signifies a happy life. But then the episodes started. At first, it was just minor confusion, forgetting where she put her keys or forgetting a conversation we had over dinner. I brushed it off as stress. But quickly, it spiraled into a daily nightmare. Every morning, I would wake up to her screaming or cowering in the corner of the bed, demanding to know who I was and how I got into her room. I became a full-time caretaker, a narrator of our own history. I spent my savings on specialists, neurologists, and psychiatrists who couldn't find a single thing wrong with her. Every MRI was clear, every blood test was perfect. They called it dissociative fugue or atypical amnesia, but nobody had a cure. I stayed up late every night creating what I called the memory binder. It was a massive leather-bound book filled with photos of us, letters we'd written, ticket stubs from our first dates, and a detailed timeline of our love. Every morning was a grueling 2-hour process. I would sit by the bed, speak in a low, soothing voice, and slowly reintroduce her to her own life. I would show her the scar on my chin from when I tripped on our first hike. I would play our song on my phone. I would watch the light slowly come back into her eyes as she remembered who I was. It was exhausting, heartbreaking, and soul-crushing, but I did it because I loved her. I felt like a hero in a tragic romance. The only man in the world who could bring his woman back from the brink of oblivion every single day. The weight of her condition started to isolate me from the rest of the world. My friends stopped calling because I was always busy reprogramming Sarah. My parents stopped asking us over for dinner because the tension was too much for them to handle. My work suffered because I was constantly looking at the home security camera, worried she'd wake up from a nap, forget everything again, and wander out of the apartment into traffic. I was living in a constant state of hypervigilance and grief. I felt like I was dating a ghost that looked like my girlfriend. I lost 15 pounds. I had dark circles under my eyes that wouldn't go away. But I never complained to her. I just kept trying to save her, thinking that one day, she would just wake up and stay present. Then came that rainy Thursday morning. It started like any other, but something felt off. She woke up and for the first time in months, she remembered me instantly. My heart nearly burst with joy. I thought we had finally turned a corner. But as we sat having coffee, she slipped. She mentioned a very specific detail about a movie we'd watched 3 weeks ago. A movie she supposedly had no memory of seeing. Then, she laughed at an inside joke I hadn't explained to her yet that morning. I felt a cold prickle at the back of my neck. She started getting the details of our yesterdays wrong in a way that felt rehearsed. It wasn't the genuine, terrifying confusion of an amnesiac. It was the slight hesitation of an actress who hadn't checked her script in a few hours. The suspicion was a poison that seeped into my veins. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe her memory was just patchy. But the seed was planted. I waited until she went to take a long bath, her self-care time that I always paid for. And I did the one thing I promised I'd never do. I checked her phone. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. She usually kept it under her pillow, but she'd left it charging on the nightstand. And there it was, the group chat with her best friends Emily and Chloe. They weren't concerned. They were mocking me. Sarah had sent a message the night before saying, "He actually cried this morning when I recognized him for 5 minutes. I'm such a good actress. I should be in Hollywood. The terrified stranger, look is my best work yet." Another message from Emily asked when she was going to end the experiment, and Sarah replied, "Why would I? He does everything for me. He cooks, cleans, pays all the rent because he thinks I'm incapacitated. It's like having a butler who thinks he's a saint. I'll keep it going until I save enough for that apartment in the city next month. Plus, it's hilarious watching him try so hard to win me back every morning." I felt a coldness settle over me that I can't even describe. It wasn't just anger, it was a total ego death. The woman I was sacrificing my health, my money, and my sanity for was treating my love like a long-running sitcom. She was watching me crumble under the weight of her fake illness, and laughing about it with her friends over cocktails. Every tear I shed, every hour I spent researching cures, every night I stayed awake making sure she was breathing. It was all a joke to her. She wasn't sick. She was just a predator who found the ultimate way to exploit someone's empathy. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you the sheer scale of the revenge I unleashed, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have just confronted her and kicked her out? Or would you have made sure she felt the exact same psychological horror she'd been weaponizing against you? This is the point of no return. Tell me, am I the villain for what comes next? I didn't just want to leave, I wanted to delete her. If she wanted to play a game of forgotten identities and psychological manipulation, I was going to make sure she won the grand prize. I spent the next 72 hours in a state of hyper-focused, robotic calm. I took a week of emergency leave from work. I waited until she went out for a specialist appointment, which I now knew was probably just a spa day or a shopping trip with my credit card. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I went into overdrive. I had already rented a massive, climate-controlled storage unit across town using a burner phone and a fake name. I didn't just pack her things, I scrubbed her from the physical world. I hired a professional moving crew, told them I was surprised renovating for my ex, and had them move every single piece of furniture that she had picked out. I replaced it with cheap, generic stuff I bought off Craigslist in the middle of the night. Every hair tie in the bathroom sink, every tampon in the cabinet, every single scrap of her clothing was bagged, tagged, and moved to the storage unit. I took the pictures out of the frames and didn't just hide them. I burned them in a metal bin in the backyard. I replaced them with stock photos of random families I printed at a 24-hour kiosk or pictures of me with women from my college years that she'd never met. I even repainted the bedroom a cold, clinical gray in 4 hours. I was a man possessed. I scrubbed the scent of her perfume out of the carpets with industrial cleaner. By 6 p.m. that evening, the apartment didn't look like our home anymore. It looked like a bachelor pad inhabited by a man who had never heard the name Sarah. But the centerpiece, the real dagger, was the memory binder. I tore out every single page of our real history. I replaced them with a completely fabricated, dark narrative. I spent all night typing it out. I wrote a story about a man named Mark, me, who lived alone and was slowly losing his mind grieving for a sister who had died in a tragic car accident years ago. I put in fake medical reports I designed on my laptop, stating that I suffered from grief-induced hallucinatory disorder. I made the binder look old and weathered. I even put in a photo of her, one I had distorted with an AI filter to make her look gaunt and ghost-like, and labeled it the woman who haunts the halls. I wanted her to wake up in a world that didn't just forget her, but one that actively argued she was a ghost or a figment of a madman's imagination. I went into her laptop. I'd guessed her password months ago. It was the date of our first anniversary, which made me laugh with bitter irony, and I didn't delete her files. I moved them all to a hidden, encrypted partition that would take a forensic expert to find. I replaced her desktop wallpaper with a default system error screen. I took her phone while she was sleeping that final night, swapped the SIM card for a blank one, and did a full factory reset. I even changed the contact names in the cloud. If she tried to call her mother, she'd be calling a pizza place in Nebraska. If she tried to call Emily, she'd be calling a disconnected line. I was building a digital and physical coffin for her identity. That final night, I lay in bed next to her, and the air felt like electricity. I could feel the heat radiating off her body. The body I used to hold so tightly when she was scared. I felt a profound sense of disgust. She reached out in her sleep to touch my arm, and I had to bite my lip to keep from recoiling. This was the woman who told her friends I was a butler. This was the person who enjoyed the terrified stranger look in her own eyes. I didn't sleep for a second. I just watched the shadows move across the ceiling, counting the minutes. 4 Uhr am. 5 Uhr am. 6 Uhr am. When the alarm finally went off, I stayed perfectly still, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I watched her eyes flutter open. She did the usual stretch, the usual yawn. And then she turned to me to begin her daily performance. She took a deep breath, widened her eyes, and began the routine. Who are you? Why am I in this bed? Please don't hurt me. Her voice was perfect, trembling, high-pitched, the voice of a victim. I didn't react the way I usually did. I didn't reach out to comfort her. I didn't shush her and tell her it was okay. I just rolled over, looked at her with a face of pure, cold, clinical confusion, and said, "I'm sorry, how did you get into my apartment? Are you the cleaning lady?" The look of genuine shock that crossed her face was the most honest thing I'd seen from her in a year. Her actress mask didn't just slip, it shattered. She blinked, her mouth hanging open. "Mark. It's me, Sarah. Stop joking. It's not funny." I sat up, pulling the blankets away, revealing the cold, empty room. "Sarah? I don't know a Sarah. Look, lady, I don't know if you're high or if you're a squatter, but you need to get out before I call the police." She scrambled out of bed, her face turning a sickly shade of pale. "Mark, stop it. Our photos. Look at the photos on the dresser." She ran to the dresser, grabbing the frames. She stared at the pictures of me and a random girl I'd found online. Who is this? Where am I? Where is our stuff? She ran to the closet and ripped it open. The sight of only my clothes, organized in a way she'd never seen, made her let out a small, strangled scream. She ran to the bathroom, looking for her expensive serums and her floral bathrobe. Nothing. Just a single blue towel and my shaving kit. She was spiraling now, a real, visceral panic taking over. This wasn't a script anymore. She was living the very nightmare she had been faking for months. She grabbed the memory binder from the nightstand, her last tether to the Mark she thought she could control. She flipped through the pages frantically. She saw the history I'd written about my dead sister. She saw the medical reports about my hallucinations. She saw the ghost-like photo of herself labeled as a haunting. She looked at me, her eyes wide and bloodshot, tears streaming down her face. "What did you do? Mark, please, what did you do to my life?" I stood in the doorway, crossing my arms, looking at her with nothing but pity. "I don't know who you are, but you're clearly having a very serious mental health crisis. You're talking about a life that doesn't exist. I've lived here alone since my sister died. I think you need to leave." The screaming that came out of her then was primal. It was the sound of someone realizing they had played a game they weren't prepared to lose. She tried to show me her phone, but when she turned it on, it was a blank welcome screen. No contacts. No messages. No proof. She tried to shout names of our neighbors, but I'd already told the neighbors the week before that I had a stalker ex-girlfriend who might show up, and that they shouldn't engage with her. She was a ghost in her own home. She was shouting at me, hitting my chest, screaming that she was Sarah, that we loved each other, that she was sorry for the texts. So she admitted it. But I didn't flinch. I just looked at her like she was a stranger on the street having a breakdown. "I'm calling an ambulance for you," I said calmly. "You're not well." That was the final blow. She realized that by pretending to have no memory, she had given me the perfect legal and psychological cover to treat her like a total stranger. She collapsed on the floor of the empty living room, sobbing, gasping for air. She looked so small, so broken. For a split second, the old Mark, the one who loved her, wanted to kneel down and hold her. But then I remembered the text. It's like having a butler who thinks he's a saint. The pity died instantly. I grabbed my keys and my pre-packed suitcase. The police and paramedics are on their way. I lied. I'm going to wait in my car. I suggest you gather whatever dignity you have left and go. I walked out and locked the door from the outside. I had already dropped her actual belongings at the storage unit and mailed the key to her mother's house 3 states away with an anonymous note that said, "Sarah is moving back. She'll need this." I drove away and never looked back. I blocked every mutual friend. I deleted my social media. I even moved to a different city a month later, transferred by my job. I don't know what happened when she finally walked out of that apartment. I don't know if she told her friends the truth, that she got out manipulated by the butler, or if she had to pretend she really did have amnesia just to explain why she was found wandering the halls of an apartment she didn't live in. The aftermath was strange. For the first few weeks, I felt a soaring sense of victory. I felt like I had reclaimed my life. But then the silence started to set in. I realized that in erasing her, I had erased a huge part of myself too. I had spent so long being her caretaker that I didn't know who I was without the trauma. I started seeing a therapist, a real one, and it took me months to even admit what I'd done. My therapist told me that while her behavior was abusive and sociopathic, my response was a calculated psychological strike that indicated I had been pushed into a state of reactive abuse. I still think about her sometimes. Not with love, but with a lingering, cold curiosity. Did she learn anything? Does she still look in the mirror and wonder if she exists? Or did she just find a new butler to play her games with? I lost thousands of dollars, my home, and my peace of mind to her. I think the price she paid, a few hours of absolute, existential terror, was a bargain. People tell me I should have just left a note and walked away. They say living well is the best revenge. But they weren't there. They didn't feel the soul-crushing weight of explaining what a fork is to a woman who was secretly counting the minutes until she could text her friends about how much of a loser I was. So, I'm putting it to you, the jury of the internet. Was I wrong? Did I cross a line into being a villain myself? Or was this the only way to truly break the cycle of her manipulation? I didn't hurt her physically. I didn't steal her things. They were all waiting for her in that storage unit. I just gave her a taste of the void. Like this video if you think she had it coming and you would have done something similar. Subscribe for more stories like this, where the nice guy finally stops being nice. And please, for my own sanity, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Was the gaslighting revenge too much, or was it poetic justice? I'll be reading every single comment. I'll see you all in the next story.